Okay. Grace and peace, everybody. I'm gonna give y'all a couple of seconds, and we're gonna get started. We're waiting for our special guest. Let me look at this thing. My phone gonna die, but I'm gonna put it on. For our special guest. All right, good. These comments should be popping up in a second. Dunamis, what's good? Y'all know some names came up, Pastor Johnson. Some names came up during the debate with Vocab, and I said that certain people, like Tell You Ministries, we had them on the other day. I said Minister Dante. I know I had so much other stuff going on. I know he said he was available yesterday, but I think it's better this way, that we're going to interview certain individuals. So I was going to hit Minister Dante by himself, Tell You Ministries, those brothers by themselves, and Vocab by himself. It so happens that Vocab is available today, and we're going to ask Vocab some questions. We're going to, Vocab is going to explain certain things to us, because I'm quite sure some of you have had questions. A lot of people say we don't want to hear anything, but I think one of the things with me, I think dialogue is good, and dialogue we're going to have. Now, certain things we're not going to discuss. Smith, some things was said about a co-laborer in this work, assistant urban apologetic work, and we appreciate her work. You know what I'm saying? It's not too many sisters in that urban apologetic work, and trust me, this sister's been putting some work in. These folk out here talking crazy, but we're not going to get into that. She said she's going to post some stuff, then we'll pick it up from there. But some of us said Vocab needs. Everyone teaches. We need to discuss. That's Joe Nuff. This is why I'm here. Sean, listen, Stephen, this is why we're here tonight. A lot of people, and like I said, even Israelites have been hitting me about the 400 years. I don't believe in the 400 years. I want to share our perspective, and I don't want y'all, like somebody even hit me today and said, well, Vocab don't represent all Christians. We know anybody that come on here don't represent everybody, whatever group. If they're Israelites, Teo Ministry said that they understood there were people that didn't hold their own position, the position that they're holding when we start dealing with this subject. But it's good to hear these things. It's good for people to know what's out here. And people have been saying, because I'm so open, I'm so vocal, especially with people that are involved in what we call Messianic Hebrew Israelism, people been having a problem because, the church wants y'all to be, far as the church concerned, listen, Melinda 1973, far as the church concerned, y'all ain't nothing but a big cult. Y'all ain't nothing but a big cult. Y'all take them scriptures, run amok, do what y'all want with them scriptures. And they think that because I am not so quick to condemn people, and I want people to have dialogue, people to know what's going on out here, people are automatically saying y'all are over here running amok. I believe in letting getting it from the horse's mouth. And a lot of times when we get involved in certain things, we're not really getting it from the horse's mouth if we're out there just dialoguing. Let me see. Hopefully he's going to jump on a second, that we're just not out there saying what we want to say and not representing the people. If you start saying some things, it's good to have the people around, or it's good for me to explain why it's A, B, C, and D. Let me pull up some clips from this person. Let me pull up something from that person's website. Outside of that, we can just say whatever we want to say. And I'm going to talk about that later on when we talk about that sister. I'm going to bring some of that stuff up, because sometimes I told individuals, when you're involved in apologetics, sometimes you have to just bring certain things out from a point of view. But Sister Lewis, I believe Vocab may take some questions. And if so, y'all can start pulling those questions. Y'all can start posting them questions and I'll pull them up. Now, we're going to be respectful. One thing we try to do, and I try to tell people, Sister Lewis, is that when we start dealing with certain things, everything's not so black and white. Everything's not so black and white. Some people would think automatically that things have to do with black people, white people. Sometimes things have to do with what's good, what's bad, truth, and error. And we're trying to get to truth and error in so many other things. So I want y'all to keep that in mind as we begin to get into this conversation. I'm looking down at questions that y'all may have. And like I said, we're going to deal with certain things, but we want to say specifically, we want to hear Vocab specifically on his views on the debate. There's the Teo Ministry and other people came on. We want to hear him specifically with his views on the debate and his tactics and other things. If y'all have questions and he's willing to answer them, we're going to get into that a little bit afterward. Vocab, are you there? Can you hear me?
Yes. Let me just open my camera here.
Okay. Let me sip my coffee.
Same thing.
Vocab Malone, the guy that every Israelite hates. I'm going to keep it 100 right here. The guy that they love to hate. They said I could deal with everybody else, but I just can't deal with that vocab.
I have a special anointing, brother.
A special anointing?
Special anointing to irritate.
You got an irritating anointing. Why? Tell me about the debate. Let's start off with that. Everybody know who you are. Tell me about the debate. A lot of people said, Vocab, the way you start, you started off different. You started off different, and people are they were a little confused. You brought up some other names coming out the gate, and I interviewed those brothers later on. Mm-hmm. Talk to us about the debate, your tactics in these 400 years. Because apparently you have apparently Vocab have a problem with the 400 years, and he's very vocal about it. Come on, man. You got the floor.
Yeah, that's a fair question, and I agree. A lot of people were saying exactly what you just said. So what was the goal is to show a few things, important connections with the opening statement. We'll just start there since you asked about that. A key piece to my opening statement was Dante Fortin's website, the Statement of Faith, specifically this line right here, and it's under the section labeled prophecy. Can you hear me good?
Yes, sir.
Where it said, I do not endorse any modern day prophets. That specific line. I read more of it than that, but that specific line where Dante Fortin says, do not endorse any modern day prophets. I transitioned immediately from there. That's where the Teo Ministry stuff came in. So what I was showing is that indeed Dante endorses Teo Ministries who function in their ministry as if they are making prophetic announcements. And I wasn't talking about everything Teo has ever said in the world, right? What I'm talking about are specific things that Dante has co-signed in some way. So when he shares one of their videos, when he links one of their videos, indeed, the main parts of the interview I read were an interview on Dante's platform. And I made the comment that during that, if you listen to the interview, you'll hear him say good response or something similar a number of times when they're giving these prophetic announcements. What I simply mean is predictions. Now, I heard Teo Ministries on your show. He said, we don't ever make prophecy. We just interpret the Bible. That's their interpretation. Now, I'm not trying to be funny, but I'm trying to make a point with this. That's what Harold Camping said. He said, I'm not making predictions. I'm simply interpreting what the Bible says about this subject.
And it's interesting you would bring up Harold Camping in the very beginning to show that Christians have, because I've said that in numerous videos, that Christians have predicted from 88, 99, 2000, why he's coming. Christians have predicted false. What's the problem with prediction, studying, and attempting to interpret? Why do you see the problem with that?
Well, if I want to give a charitable interpretation, I'll say this. We love Jesus, and we want him to come back. We hate this sinful world. We don't like the way this wicked world operates. You know, we're aliens. We're foreign to it. So we want Jesus, and sometimes we get a little excited. That's the charitable interpretation, and I think there's people that probably fall into that category, especially followers. The not-so-charitable interpretation is people want some sensationalist aspect of their ministry that's almost more than the Bible, because it goes beyond what the Bible's really saying. They know that it'll attract attention. They know that it can give power over people because people view you as having some key to unlock something. Now, I did compare them to Camping. I didn't compare them to other people, but I'm just making a point here. So please, no one misunderstand what I'm saying. David Koresh, his followers, the big thing was he could crack one of the seals of the book of Revelation. That was a big thing. Even when he would do incredibly wicked things like snatch up their daughters, they would say, but he is the one given during this time that can open up this seal. So it was like this all-encompassing thing that really covered frankly, a multitude of literal sins in the eyes of the followers. I'm not saying Teo Ministries is like that. I'm not saying they're leading call. I want to make sure everyone hears me. I'm making the point about interpretation and how we go wrong. I think David Koresh and Harold Camping, we don't really know their intentions. They could have been very well. Who knows, really? I don't feel like people really know.
Wicked all the time. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we jumped the gun about, but when someone says their intention, I think we can say the effect, easier. But my point by saying that is this. What I was showing is Dante is saying in his statement of faith, I don't endorse any modern day prophets. What I was showing is that his actions show that he, in essence, endorses Teo ministry, specifically the prophecy in regards to 400 years. So if I share something, I get it if you say, hey, I don't agree with everything here. But if I'm on the same page of that person, or if I say, certain comments about it, and I mentioned that in my opening statement, I said his comments when he shares these things are key. He would say, oh, I was just copying and pasting. Now, it's true, sometimes he was imitating their title, but also he would sometimes add his own comments. It was a mixed picture. It wasn't him only imitating from what I saw. I'm willing to be corrected, but from what I saw is it wasn't only merely imitating titles. However, there's certain things I would share where I would change the description if I were to share something so people would know the difference, because there's a sort of sense of imitating it there. My point was he is, in a very real sense, endorsing certain people who are functioning as modern day prophets, and these modern day prophets are getting it wrong, specifically Teo Ministries and Pastor Omar. Now, I was also indicating, and this was an opening statement, by certain things he said and did, that he was in the same boat as well. Because here's the problem I ran into, Brother Brian. To try to fully understand what Dante taught on this issue, and even Teo, was sort of like a scavenger hunt. And there's a few reasons for that. It was never, there's very rare times you'll find them really clearly lay out the full picture. So you have to listen to this talk, write stuff down, make notes, listen to that talk over there, write stuff down, take notes. And then the full picture starts to emerge. And then sometimes there will be blank spaces on one of these guys' interpretation, and you go to the other one and you find out this equals this blank space. So it merges a sort of a basic picture, because there's some of these guys who have been on the 400 years tip, and there's a lot of similarities. I know that they said a number of times he never understood what we taught. I had a great idea what they taught. When I'm asking questions during the debate, it's not because I'm clueless. It's because I have a clue. What I'm trying to do is confirm it. Now, my view is a man will say what he believes and say, this is it, and lay it out, instead of playing dodgeball. And I feel like that's the right thing to do, right? You know what I'm saying? Now, so when I'm asking these questions about what it is he would believe during cross-examination, that's later. The point is to have it established clearly in the audience's mind. Debaters, the person that is defending the position also is supposed to lay out their position and why they hold to it. Dante never did that. He never did that. And so when people said I was changing the subject, I was flabbergasted, because if I would like to.
People said that you threw him off from the beginning, so we couldn't lay it out because you sideswiped them from the very beginning. Do me a favor before we even go on, Gideon. Read this. The 400-year doctrine isn't a new prophecy. So those who push it are not prophesying. You agree with this? What you just heard? Look at the screen.
So, how does something not being new equal that it's not a prophecy? That doesn't make any sense. You can have a really old prophecy.
And somebody promoting an old prophecy.
Yeah. I don't fully agree with that. He would need to tell me, who started this prophecy, but that's illogical. You can promote an old prophecy. So something, even if it's really old, that doesn't mean it's not a prophecy. I don't think, someone else said they never claimed to be prophets. This is the game I'm talking about. When they were on with you, he went down a list of things he viewed as calamities. What he's saying, I hope everyone understood what this is with Teo now. What he was saying is, here's these things that only we predicted. and he named 5 or 6. Now, I think his interpretations and all that is incredibly wrong. I don't think he's predicting and getting anything right. He'll talk about the law of some, like an African country that is now opening up, and he'll act. The implication is it happened in 2019 when a lot of these countries were talking about it 5 or 6 years before, for example. So it makes it look as if Ghana saying, come on in, happened in 2019, but it didn't. It happened prior, and it's technically still true in 2019, but it didn't happen in 20. I caught a lot of stuff like that. Now, what I'm saying by that is this, that when you add it all up, you start to get the full picture of what they're saying. And they are making predictions. And then they were literally right after he's with you, Brother Bree, he said, I'm not making predictions, or I'm not making prophecies, but he just talked about several fulfilled predictions. Now, how is he making predictions that are being fulfilled if he's not making prophecies? I'm trying to understand how he separates those things out. He like when he said, I believe the date was in August 2019, then I switched it to August 2020, but I never date set. How does Teo Ministry understand August 2019? It's a date. And then if you change it to another date, that's a date setting activity. It doesn't make it not a date setting when right after you say, I never date set. That's like punching someone in the nose, like, I never punch people in the face. You just punch someone in the face. Of course you punch people in the face. To me, that's what I saw happening. To me, that's sort of a giving the caveat doesn't mean that's not the activity you're doing. Mm-hmm. If I would like to post my opening statement, it's written now, and I would like someone to tell me where I went off topic. Certainly, I gave 2 illustrations or examples or similarities, whatever you want to call them, with John Gotti and Harold Camping. But every single line in here is about the 400 years. And let me show you the parts that are specifically about Dante. I do not endorse any modern day prophets. What I'm showing is he endorses people who are functioning as modern day prophets, and they're getting it wrong. And that's why, if you look, I said, this is the key to his downfall. That was the lingo I put in there. And so I gave the examples from them. And it wasn't just about the titles. It was what they said in those titles. I know people were like, I heard them say, well, he just said the title. Yeah, but if you listen to it in those videos, they were doing things similar to what they did with you, talking about locust and this and that. They're doing these very real things. Talking about people. They talked about the COVID-19 having prisoners being let out early as fulfilling a prophecy as the prisoners getting out. They viewed that as a fulfillment of one of their predictions that prisoners were getting out. So,
or signs of things happening, or signs
yes. And all I'm saying is, look, let's just be upfront about what's happening. And then Dante also had things, and I named several things, such as when he interviewed Teo, the 400-year prophecy, fact versus failure. And that's where he would say, that's a good answer, and that kind of thing. He would co-sign it. It's on his platform. 400 years judgment in the fall of America. This came out 3 months ago. And then what initially, the whole thing that started is actually with the subtitle of one of his books. It's called The Black Hebrew Awakening, the Final 400 Years as Slaves in America. Now, interestingly enough, the book has very little about a 400-year prophecy. Now, I would say, I bet he would say, Vocab is not smart enough to understand how I tie it in. I get that. But it doesn't have very much explicit content about the 400-year prophecy, right? Now, if you read it, which I have, you'll see that. But what you see is 2 key things. The title itself, the final 400 years. The word final is important, and that's why I went to a dictionary. I said, what does the word final mean here? The last in a series or a process. That's what it means. And I said, it's important that he quotes Genesis 15, 13, 14 in the Amazon description of that book, the final 400 years as slaves in America, because that is the basis of these guys' prophecy. For Pastor Omar, that's the basis. For Dante Fortson, that's the basis. And also for Dante Fortson, that's the basis. So if someone is paying attention to what's going on, it's very clear when someone says the final 400 years plus quotes Genesis 15, 13, 14. And I don't know if people caught it. That's why at the very end of the debate, I probably should have got to it sooner. I said, who are the Amorites? Because it says until the iniquity of the Amorites is fulfilled. Mm-hmm. And he had a very bizarre answer, frankly. He said, I don't know. We don't know who they are. Because it's fulfilled. If the iniquity of the Amorites is built up, prophecy is fulfilled. And guess what? That's exactly what happened when they came in there. They had spent their time in Canaan, those Canaanites running wild, and the Israelites acted as the judgment of God. And then the same thing actually happened to them. The same thing later on happened to them. They were also judged by wicked nations. It's not because Israel was so perfect that they judge those Canaanites. The Assyrians, the Babylonians, and indeed to a certain extent during the Judges period, the Canaanites, the same thing. And God said that I'm going to do the same thing to you if y'all don't get it together. And that same thing happened to them. So I brought that out. And then I had certain little descriptions, such as when he said in a January 12, 2020 post, and this was not him repeating something someone else said. This was his sentence. Was there a shift in attitude towards Israel in regards to the 4-year prophecy? Because what he said in this post, January 12, 2020, this is all from my opening statement. I literally said everything I'm saying. He was saying the urban apologists are lying about it being a failure, or they're just too lazy to research. That's his quote. And then he said, was there a shift in attitude towards Israel? Indicating in some way that's a fulfillment of the prophecy, because he says they want you to think it's failed. And I highlighted this sentence in my opening where it says, that couldn't be further from the truth. He is saying it was fulfilled. So I knew that he thought that. So my point was to say, you would need to show how it's been fulfilled, because the title of the debate was, did you falsely prophesy, or did you get the 400 years thing wrong? So if he's saying it couldn't be further from the truth, then why didn't he do the same things in his opening statement? Because an opening statement is not a response to the person's first statement. In a proper debate, each person's opening statement establishes the foundation for what they believe. And I know you got a guest on who clearly understood that.
Yes,
he understood.
Yes.
Yeah, I appreciated his information there, because he understood basic debate quorum and protocol, and he made that point. And I everything he said was right. I was like, man, I wish I would have said it that clear. He's exactly right. That's what's up. Wish we could have heard from this guy sooner. You know, he was right. So like he explained it well. You know, I never really explained it as well as he did. He did it. So like looking at that, you say, okay, so why didn't he do that? And then I brought the big thing where he asks them about the 400 years, and he used the past tense. When do you guys believe the 400 years were up? And what do you guys teach that would happen after the 400 years was up? And then I showed how they literally changed it, and they said they changed it. And I transcribed everything. So, okay, I'm gonna stop right here. So I see a comment on the screen. This is curious to me. Lyric says, Vocab, where are your receipts? Please show us in scripture. While Lyric is asking this question, I am talking about a part of the debate where I read a transcript that I personally made. So I sat there. I'm not a fast typer, so it took like an hour to type out. I didn't even use all the parts I had typed out. You know, in a transcript where, you know, you're like a stenographer, but I'm like a slow stenographer. Mm-hmm. But since I gave the time code, everybody could hear exactly. I gave the exact time code plus the video. If the topic of the debate is, did Dante Fortson falsely prophesy or get the 400 years wrong? If that's a topic, then the primary source material in the discussion is going to be his own body of work material that he explicitly endorses. Now, I wasn't only going to focus on Teo, and that's what I want to talk about in a second here. It's your show, so but when I get that chance to talk about what I discussed in the second opening or whatever, the second round, which was all his material, not Teo, not even once in that second one. And so bringing that out is showing from his own material. And I brought a number of Bible verses out. Someone said, where's your Bible verses? I brought Bible verses, I believe, that spoke to the reality of false prophets and to take it seriously and that kind of thing. And then after that was done was the second round. The second round, I only had one source. It was a blog post by Dante Fortson, June 19th, 2018. And what I had done in advance was highlight and bold all the places I would need to read, because it's rather lengthy. And the title alone is important. It's called The Final Juneteenth. And it was published in 2018. I do not understand how that's not clear. There are predictions happening there. You're telling the audience this is the final Juneteenth. This article is subtitled, Brother Berean, all descendants of the transatlantic slave trade need to read this. So who does the final Juneteenth specifically apply to then? It's obvious by the subtitle. And then all I did was show how he said all these things like, this is not a coincidence. That's not a coincidence. The time has to be right. Now is the time. We're seeing the times of big trouble. Many of us strongly believe the curse ends in 2019. That's a prediction saying the curse ends in 2019. So he has to explain what it means of the curse end. Now I have some idea of what he's saying, but here's the thing. the 2019 prophecy was not accurately fulfilled, and that's why Teo switched it to 2020. So even between them, there's some differences. Teo's was originally 2019. That I ever heard, Dante never switches to 2020. Just a second, I got to mute myself. I got to talk to this kid real quick.
Okay,
little one.
All right. And if y'all have any questions, we can bring them up. I'm gonna ask Vocab right now. In your research, because that's what someone said earlier. In your research, what does the Bible say at all about 400 years? 400, 430. What does the Bible say at all about 400 years in your studying of the Bible? You've been a student of the Bible for a minute. You still in seminary? Or you out of school?
No, I'm out of school right now. I completed a degree, a master's at Phoenix Seminary, and then towards the end of my other program at Talbot.
What in your time? What does the Bible say, if anything, about 400 years, about bondage, Israelite coming out of bondage?
Well, so Genesis 15 is very key. Genesis 15 is very key. So let me read here over Genesis 15. Then the Lord said to Abram, know for certain that your offspring will be sojourners in the land that is not theirs, will be servants there, and they will be afflicted for 400 years. So the Bible does talk about 4 years, but let me read this next part. But I will bring judgment on the nation that they serve, and afterward they shall come out with great possessions. As for you, you shall go back to your fathers in peace. You shall be buried of a good old age, and they shall come back here in the fourth generation, for the iniquity of the Amorites is not yet complete. So there that is. Now, the Amorites are one of the main population groups in Canaan. In fact, if you look in Genesis 10, they're listed along with others as descendants of Ham, and they're actually mentioned here, verses 19 to 21 in the same chapter. So this comment here by Yahweh, the implication is that the Amorites will get dispossessed, and this is going to be divine punishment. So this sort of accumulated iniquity is going to be so great that Yahweh will not tolerate their presence in the land any longer. And this was fulfilled in the book of Joshua. That's when the Amorites were pushed out. The mention of the Amorites does not allow this to be some American prophecy. And this is something we should look at as Bible students to be like, praise God, this is yet another promise. Regardless of what you feel about me, just look at what Yahweh told Abram. And well, he's still Abram here. He says, yo, I am going to do this for your descendants. This is going to happen. He's given him a timetable. He's even given him a reason why it's not happening just yet. The Amorites were pushed out. And the thing about Joshua is a lot of people don't realize that there's a fulfillment text in Joshua itself. Let me show everyone this real quick. Sometimes I lose track of which exact.
And somebody else brought up something interesting. Somebody said, Vocab, Dante showed receipts. Where were your receipts? Dante showed receipts about the 400. I believe they were talking about the 400 years. Dante showed receipts. He quoted a few universities that were speaking on certain things. He said people were already discussing these things. Do you feel, you've been in a few debates before, do you feel you won the debate?
Well, so if you watch my debates, you'll never find me go around like trash talking, so-and-so lost, so-and-so won. But since you're asking me a direct question, I feel like Dante was I was in the boxing ring by myself, and Dante was off to the side with the stands. What I'm saying is he never discussed the topic of the debate. He literally basically said, I'm not going to let Vocab distract me with the topic of the debate. Meaning when I wanted to get into the 400 years, he was trying to get into identity proof texting. Or you could say from somewhat he was viewing as historical. When people talk about Dante brought receipts, and you just mentioned the universities, that was in relationship to his trying to prove his identity, which was not the topic of the debate. This debate could have happened with a white guy. What I mean by that is it's not about who now he'll say that's not true because you have to know the identity of people. You still have to ask yourself, when was this fulfilled? And was it fulfilled in some other part? It was fulfilled during the days of the patriarchs and during the early days of Israel. It was fulfilled already. And I'm going to show two examples of how that's true. So it's not fulfilled again during America, America's captivity. And nothing about America fits the prophecy. It's Americocentric to base the beginning of the clock at 1619. And that's exactly what these guys do. That's why if you listen to some of their broadcasts, they'll say, hey, I need to also give a shout out to the brothers and sisters of other parts of the world. And, you guys too. And then they'll say things like, because I listen to all this stuff, and they'll say, well, the thing is, America is sort of the clock because it's the center of everything. What? Yeah, that's what Americans think. So to me, I see no way that Dante won because he never proved the point that he didn't falsely prophesy. He wanted to talk about vocab's a racist, and here's my identity. That's fine if he wants to discuss those things, but those weren't the topic of the debate. So when people say Dante brought receipts, in regards to what? The reason I didn't track every single thing he brought up down is because it wasn't about the debate topic. It's like, Brother Brian, when he brought up the stuff about this university says this university says that, wasn't it about supposed evidence of Israelites in West Africa? Isn't that what it was about? Right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What does that have to do with the topic of the debate about 400 years? What he would have had to done is say, here's the basis of the prophecy, Genesis 15. Now I'm going to show you how it wasn't fulfilled the first time around, because part of their position has to be, now Dante has had two contradictory statements on this. I didn't have time to bring this on debate. One place he indicated it was fulfilled during the original days of the Exodus. Another place he indicated there's some debate about that. So he seems ambivalent about it. And so it's like, okay, which one do you think it is? Because some of these guys will say it was fulfilled the first time, yet there's a dual fulfillment. So it's being fulfilled the second time. So I also understand a prerequisite to them saying there's a 400 prophecy is not necessarily that it failed the first time or that it didn't happen the first time, rather. I actually understand that as well. But which one is the position? Teo's position, clearly, it didn't happen the first time. Therefore, it's this time. Dante was ambiguous on this. But my point is, there's no way Dante could have won because he never debated the issue at hand. So to me, it's not about trash talk and this and that. It's like, yo, was a prophecy in the Bible fulfilled? Ladies and gentlemen, prophecies in the Bible are filled. Aren't we glad as Bible believers? Don't we want to see that? That we say, look, here's more proof that what we believe is true. He never did that. He never stood by his. So I don't have respect for that. And when people are saying he brought receipts, ask yourself, even regardless of, let's someone bringing up a source is not a receipt, by the way, because you could have the wrong receipt, right? You didn't purchase that item, or you picked that up off the ground, right? So the things he was bringing up as sources, everyone who watched that needs to ask yourself, were any of those about a 400-year prophecy? The answer is no. Now, let me show you just real quick from Joshua how the 400-year prophecy was fulfilled yet again. Joshua chapter 21, verse 43. Thus the Lord gave to Israel all the land that he swore to give to their fathers. Remember, that was part of that prophecy in Genesis 15. And they took possession of it, and they settled there. And the Lord gave them rest on every side, just as he had sworn to their fathers. Who's the father that God swore to? Right? Beginning with Abraham. Not one of all their enemies had withstood them, for the Lord had given all their enemies into their hands. Now listen to this. Not one word of all the good promises that the Lord had made to the house of Israel had failed. All came to pass. And yet I read a blog post where Dante said, this is the promise outstanding to us still. He said, as I studied different religions and stuff about, this is the outstanding promise. What about Joshua? But I'm not even done. We can go to Acts. Now, I don't know if there's anything you want to ask, because I don't want to just keep on going so fast.
No, go ahead, because people clearly said, can't you you can see COVID out here, Vocab. Stop acting crazy. You see COVID out here. Can't you see that America's under judgment?
Well, let me say, I think what's a fair response is COVID ain't just happening in America.
Look at the screen. Read. All right. Go ahead.
Let me bring up something about COVID. This is actually another example of the herald camping type tendency of Teo specifically. And I bring them up because he co-signs them and he says, I don't promote modern day prophets. What I'm saying is he does, and they're false. That's the reason why the first statement, if you read the first statement, it all ties together. Every line ties into something I said prior. So about this, originally Teo said, do we think it's just a coincidence that if you notice COVID is hitting white people harder? Because remember when it first started out, it was in Europe. That's where people were known. The continent of Africa was almost untouched, right? This is what he brought that out as evidence And right after he said this, let me tell you what he said. Now, this was not on a discussion with Dante that I remember. This was them. It was just the two of them. My point is, though, Dante did share this video. Here's what he said. Check this out. This is important. He said, just like the plagues that fell on Egypt, if you notice, Yahweh made a distinction or a separation between us and them, where the Egyptians were, those dark in the Egyptians' turf and not ours. And he said, could it be that this is the same thing? But then if you go on and listen, because sometimes they'll say, could it be? And then they'll basically later on say, it is. And he did that. He said that COVID was a fulfillment. And you saw in the evidence that it was a distinction where folks who were Israelites and as you were not getting hit, it was folks who were not Israelites. This is what he said. Now, later on, new information came out, and it's actually seems like it's the opposite as far as who gets hit. So to use COVID as a fulfillment of prophecy in the way he did show, this is interesting. So I'll stop. T. Turner, this is what I mean. It's funny. These guys were saying Vocab has no idea what we believe when I knew what they believe. Now, I will tell you one thing. That Jerusalem thing was news to me. But everything else,
not being,
yeah, that whole switcheroo, not only is identity getting stolen, but land is getting, and like cities are getting switched around, whatever. That was news to me. But everything else, I have like sort of on a timeline of what they believe. The funny thing is, the same people saying that with that last comment says, I bet Vocab believes in the rapture too. I'm not a dispensationalist. I have teachings that show I do not agree with the rapture, such as I have one called losing faith in the rapture. And I give the reasons why I don't hold to the secret rapture doctrine. I'm a historic pre-mill guy. I hold to millennium, but I hold God's people go through a tribulation. There is no secret rapture. It's a second coming. It's one event. The Bible passages to use support for the rapture are not strong. I don't think it's a false doctrine in the sense that it's a salvific issue or anything like that. I don't fight with my dispensation.
Just a misreading of the text.
Yeah, I think it's a new, basically, it's kind of a new dispy, kind of European based.
Yes.
Started out in Europe and moved to America. Now that doesn't make it true or false, but that's kind of what it is. It's not something that's original. If you read the text itself, and then even really what early interpreters said about it, this idea of a secret rapture is not present. So it's funny people say this stuff. They just don't know what's going on. But now, okay, I'm going to get to Acts in a second, but let me respond to these comments. Trying to interpret ancient prophecies is not the same as prophesying. Teo always says, this is my opinion, never either said, thus say the Lord. A few things about that. This is what I'm talking about. This is where I want to just have a good discussion on this, but I'm going to tell you, it's hard to respect people who don't stand by theirs. And I feel like this is what
but
happened.
You do agree that they do say, you have you ever heard them say, well, we prophesied this and that? I agree with his.
Yes.
Oh, what you said?
Yes. Let me show you how. When they say no one else predicted this and we predicted this, and then they show examples of what they're saying are fulfilled predictions, that is them saying things we predicted, and it's the same word as prophesied, because they're saying they're doing it from God's revelation. The same word could be in that same blank when they say predicted, right? When they do that, they are claiming they had fulfilled predictions. Now, he says they never say, thus saith the Lord. I guess it's true. I never heard them say that phrase, but in a way they do, because what they're saying is, we're just saying what the Bible says. So whoever just made that last comment, the other thing is they're not understanding the whole part of the debate is, are these prophecies still yet to be fulfilled? Because the last comment said, well, they're just talking about prophecies that are going to be fulfilled. Well, if those are prophecies that have already been fulfilled, you're missing. Part of the debate is saying those are not prophecies yet to be fulfilled. Those are prophecies that were already fulfilled. And what we're saying, and I just showed it from Joshua, that these are not prophecies yet to be fulfilled. So running around here talking about 400 years and trying to put it and switching it to different years and all this stuff, the whole thing is misguided. And that's why a lot of Hebrewites don't rock with the 400-year prophecy. I bet some of the people caping for Teo don't even believe in the 400-year prophecy. And I even heard an interview where Teo said, if this stuff hasn't happened in a couple of years, I may need to readjust. Well, at that time, people finally recognized these guys are false prophets, and Dante co-signed the mess and made damning statements of his own. Now, look, I believe the response to this will maybe be like Vocab's racist, Vocab lied, but here's what I'm saying. Show from my opening statement where I made a misquote, where I gave a link or a title that didn't exist, anything like that. Unless you're doing that, you're not really interacting with me on a detailed level. I'm going down to the detailed level of past tense and sentences. And the response is, you're a racist. What about Jeff Durbin? This is not a serious debate when this is the discussion happening, right? And notice the hypocrisy here, Brother Brian. And I know you rock with everybody, so I'm just saying your name. I'm not acting like you agree, whatever. I'm just saying it because we're talking. Right. But notice the hypocrisy. During the debate, Vocab, you need to answer right now for Jeff Durbin, but he can't respond anything about Teo. Now, let me show you the difference here. He's interviewing Teo in recent memory. He's co-signing Teo in recent memory. I haven't done nothing with Durbin and Apologia for at least 5 years. About 5 years. I haven't shared anything. I haven't done nothing. With James White, I think it's been about 4 years. Nothing. So why am I be called account to irrelevant statements not about the debate that in other settings I've already said are problematic to say the least? Yet he can't answer about something that was said on his radio show that he said good answer to. That's the hypocrisy of what I'm talking about. We have a serious problem. And I'm just saying, guys, let's stand by ours. Because everyone needs to go, unless he changes it, edits it, take it down. If everyone's, this is too much, Vocab's talking too much, I can't. Just go read the final Juneteenth article and read it with the eye of discernment and wisdom, not as a true believer, someone who just wants to believe what somebody, and ask yourself, could there be something to this? Because there's something, all you got to do is just read this one article alone. The final Juneteenth, June 19th, 2018. Just 1 second. I'll just ask a question. I got to stop my camera for a second. Go ahead.
All right, go ahead. 2 questions. I'm a good grace of peace, Ron. I'm going to pull something up here. What Vocab, why all the smoke for the Messianic Black Hebrews? Why your energy? Out of all of the urban apologists, you are by far the most popular and put in the most work when it comes to Black people that consider themselves Israel. Now, even so, more Messianic. Usually, you were wholly with the camps. Why your energy so strong for Black Israelites?
Well, as far as Messianic, there's just simply more Messianic than there are non-Messianic. The Tanakh only Hebrew Israelites, they exist, and they're a small section of them. But a few things I've noticed about them. One is they're more careful. I heard this the other day from Polite, and I do not tend to agree with Polite very much at all. Mm-hmm. But he was talking to Zion Lex, and he said, "Look, I notice the Tanakh only guys are a little more careful. They're a little more sourced, well sourced, a little in how they approach things. I think generally speaking, that's true. However, dealing with them, you might as well just be reading Michael Brown's books on how to answer Jewish objections to Jesus. My point by saying that is these guys almost have the same arguments that Jews for Judaism have, because there's a thing called Jews for Jesus, and there's a counter missionary effort primarily put on by Ashkenazi types of Jews in New York or whatever, not only but primarily, and that is called Jews for Judaism. That basically says, yo, these Christians are getting it wrong, they're trying to lie to you, they're trying to snow you, and here's the real answer. And the arguments they give are actually pretty sophisticated. You can kind of get a sense of what it would be like back in the day to be a rabbi arguing with Paul or something like that. My point by saying that is it's not the same kind of new territory. The Hebrew Israelite stuff is a different kind of new territory. We're talking about Lashawan, Kodash, we're talking about 12 tribes. Now, I know that's one Westers, but when it comes to these other guys, we're talking about things such as the flea doctrine with GOCC, which Teo ministry, and it's unclear with Dante because he hasn't stood by about what he thinks about this, their version of the flea doctrine, which is go to another place. With GOCC, it was Egypt. With Teo, it's somewhere in Africa where they think Jerusalem is, which they call the wilderness. What do they think about that? This is important because this affects people's real lives. So this 400 years, since it relates to a second Exodus, people are getting on planes and leaving the United States of America and going somewhere else. Now, someone wants to do that. That's all good. Like, it's not like, hey, whatever you want to do, right? I'm glad we can have some freedom to travel. My point by saying that is, though, if you're doing that strictly because there's some, in essence, religious prediction that you feel somebody's making, that could be affecting your life on a faulty basis, right? And so that's important. That's important to bring out. So there's many problems. And here's the other thing I'll say about this is Hebrew Israelites of all types and stripes, one West, non-one West, camp, non-camp, make a regular activity of attacking the church. So I understand they'll say, well, this isn't, to me, it's just a cop out. And the thing is, complaining about me doesn't make me disappear. But them saying, well, this isn't your business, this is our business. Okay. That's the way you feel, but I'm not going to disappear into the atmosphere tomorrow because that's what you think, right? And when I hear criticisms of the church, the so-called black, so-called white, the church, I, as a Christian, always have a tendency to take umbrage. Not that the church is always perfect, because why are we attacking the bride, right? And so when Hebrew Israelites, non-One West and One West alike, have all this vitriol for the church, and the second the church responds, they say it's a personal attack. I don't think I ever personally attacked Taylor. The closest you could say is where the Harold Camping things. But other than that, I was reading their titles, reading their quotes. That is not a personal attack. How is that a personal attack? That is not a personal attack. We got to get past this. Saying I disagree with you is not a personal attack. Let's be a man about this. Can we discuss this? Can we sit down? Me saying you're wrong even is not a personal attack. So it's not a personal attack. Calling someone a closet lesbian, that seems like a personal attack to me. Or saying, I don't ever see...
I didn't see that yet. I didn't see that yet.
Yeah. Or saying, I don't ever see her man or her kids around. This is what Dante said about Cherry. Called Nefertiti and other women coons and stuff. That seems like a personal attack to me.
Thank you. We appreciate you in the super chat. Go ahead.
So like that's a personal attack. So again, let's check this out. Even people asking my motivation. What's anyone's motivation, right? For do anything. For me, it's truth. And to me, when I see a need that's underserved, there I am. And people complain about it, but it doesn't make me disappear. And people can say, well, don't talk to them. Then, hey, that's fine. Then so-and-so don't talk. But then so-and-so will want to talk. And so we'll still be talking because there's always a place to go, always a platform, always somebody wants to have that conversation. And you'll notice with people who can just be chill and calm, we can have very nice, cordial discussions. Ron Shields was just asking a question. Him and I sat down. I don't know.
I remember. Yeah, I remember when you're at the airport back in
two times. That was the second time.
I remember.
And we could do it again. Even Sakari, who's probably the most vile Hebrew Israelite organization on the planet. Just listen to what they recently said to Sam Shamoon about how much Hebrew Israelite censored does his daughters swallow, and his daughters are minors. This is Sakari is the most foul group out, and yet notice they don't get condemned by a lot of other Hebrew Israelites. I even sat down with them. Now I won't do it anymore because they bring people's families into the equation, right? But you can find a call and sit down with them. We could do this with anybody, so it doesn't have to be personal. People make it personal, but it doesn't have to be. But let's see, what's this? Do we want to read this?
When we start dealing, people say it's 430 years. Was it Canaan? Was it Egypt? A lot of people say that it don't add up to 400. So if it doesn't add up to 400 and the Bible isn't lying, there has to be 400 years coming up sometime later on.
Well,
and who do you? Go ahead.
To me, the Amorites are very important in this discussion.
I remember you saying that before. Go ahead.
Because what God initially told Abram was, it's not going to happen until the iniquity of the Amorites has been made complete or filled up. So the Amorites' wickedness is a timetable here. So for this prophecy to be fulfilled, the Amorites have to exist, and their iniquity has to be filling up for 400 years. Who are the Amorites? They're ancient Canaanites. And as a distinct people group, they're gone. I'm not saying there's no one related to them, but I'm saying there's no one running around really for the most part today calling themselves Amorites. I've ran into a few people, but for the most part. Not only that, Stephen,
in Acts 7,
he says it was fulfilled. And check this out. Even if, so Acts 7, I'll read it here in a second. Even if the 400 years wasn't fulfilled during Exodus, which I think is problematic to say that, but I understand there's a debate and all that. Even if that's the case, that does not equal that the 400-year prophecy, as it's been stated, is true. You see what I'm saying? But here's Acts 7:6. And God spoke to this effect, that his offspring will be sojourners in a land belonging to others who would enslave them and afflict them 400 years. And then he goes on and quote, and it's obvious what he's talking about. The first prophecy was before Abraham fell asleep. The second prophecy was after he woke up. I'm not sure what the person.
There's two prophecies here. Let me ask you a question.
What's your proof text for that? Notice his name is the second Exodus, so obviously he's a true believer in the 400 years. Yeah, that means he should not be writing this from the United States. By the way,
say that again.
He should be writing this message in the wilderness. If he believes what he's saying, second Exodus, he should be writing this from the wilderness.
Vocab, let me ask you a question. Are there any black Israelites on this planet at all?
Yes. there are.
Go
Go ahead.
ahead. No, go ahead.
Well, you have a follow up? I'll answer. But
was Abraham black?
So when people do this, I always say I don't know.
Okay.
So people get upset and they want definitives. I don't understand the. And I'm not saying it doesn't matter. I'm not doing that. I'm definitely not saying they're white. And the reason why, was like, what would be the evidence of white folks running around there? That's actually part of the problem I have with the one Westers. They teach Edomites were right there in Jordan the whole time. And Ammonites and Moabites, which are Japanese and Chinese. Now they'll say they're proto-Japanese. But people with this phenotype are there in the Middle East the whole time. So I don't know. And I don't think it's... Look, see, so he's saying, yes, he was a black man. Look, here's my thing. This is not biblical interpretation anymore. What you're doing is saying, since I think this person was black or this word means that, therefore, these other people were black. And the fact is you don't know. So I understand people do it. I don't see how we can stand on a certainty to know who looked like what. Because the interesting thing about scripture is this, Brother Berean. It avoided the Greek and the other nation's vain tendency to describe everybody's physical details. The Bible, by and large, is absent of this kind of thing. When you read like things about Alexander the Great, for example, I know that's sometime later, it's obviously, but when he's described in great detail, and things like that. And there's other people who do that kind of thing. Scripture occasionally does it. Bathsheba is beautiful. That's relevant to the story.
Amen.
Absalom had long hair. That's relevant to the story because he gets caught up, right? Usually it's relevant to the story. Rarely do you kind of see a throwaway line. And the funny thing is, when you do see some of these lines, it's David is ruddy. Now, I know what people do. Well, if you go to the barbecue, you'll see that so-and-so. Look, the real fact about ruddy is when you just take it objectively, take your feelings out of it, it's basically as red as brown can be. So, like, they have red heifers. If you see a red cow, it's not red like out of the Crayola box. It's clearly a shade of brown, but it's that red tint. Now, saying someone who's black or supposed to be of African descent can have that tint is not the same as saying that that's what David was, because other people can also embody those phenotypes. So, see, that's what I'm saying. Her saying that, other people who do not look like her also are ruddy, if she's going to call herself ruddy. See, this is what I'm saying. This is sloppy. We're trying to make people look weird. When we do this, we are making the same mistake as the Europeans made before. Now, someone's going to take offense to that. I recognize that, but that's what we're doing. We're saying it looks like this, and we know. Because if once we start doing that, then we have Laban being a white man because his name means white. I don't think Laban was white, but this is not the way we really do good historical research. We shouldn't speak with such certainty when the Bible is not telling us for certain. So I just say, I don't know. But Dante said, Vocab wants to tell us everyone is white in the Bible. I never said that. I would never say. I've actually said the opposite from other data. That's almost impossible. But to say we know what any given person with a certainty looks like, we are kidding ourselves. And it has nothing to do with biblical interpretation. It has nothing to do with what's going on there. And so that's why there's a problem here, because there's the color passages the one Westers use, and a lot of the Hebrew Israelites who are not one Westers use the same ones. That's not my term, by the way. They call them the color passages. And they'll go and you look, every one, it's not saying what they're saying is said. So they're not good proof texts for this. And the crazy thing is, these Anglo-Israelites and British Israelites that even Dante mentioned, they have a set of passages that I think are equally fallacious. They use to try to show the opposite thing. And it's bizarre. Look at this. And you see their proof text. This is not. So I don't know. And I don't see it as being especially pertinent or relevant. The Lord comes back, I bow the knee either way, regardless of how he looks. But I seriously doubt he's like the Western European paintings, and I seriously doubt he's like the guy that Hebrews like to prop up either.
Vocab.
Yeah.
Who else on the planet fulfilled the prophecies of Deuteronomy 28?
The Israelites did. So here's the thing you got to do. Just go through the rest of the Tanakh. Every single one of these, and maybe you can make one exception, every single one of these is fulfilled within the very pages of the book you hold in your hand when you pick up Deuteronomy 28. You're going to eat your kids. They eat their kids. They're going to take your kings. They took the kings. Tear down your walls. Tore down the walls. You're going to be always borrowing. They're always borrowing. Literally every single passage you can find in 1 Kings, 2 Kings, 1 Chronicles, 2 Chronicles, Ezra, Nehemiah, the prophets, that you can find every. So the need to leapfrog to the.
Okay, I think we hold on a second. Zondervan Compact Dictionary. Word users refer to fair complexion. Yeah. Hold on, he's coming back on right now. And I'm going to let him read the screen after he argues. Go ahead, brother.
Sorry about that.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so the need to leapfrog to the transatlantic slave trade is something that the scripture itself does not warrant at all. It just doesn't. And even Deuteronomy 28, during the days of Jeremiah.
So Deuteronomy 28 have nothing to do with the people in Israel right now.
Wait, hold on. That seems like a different question. What are you saying?
I said Deuteronomy 28 has nothing to do with the people in Israel right now. You said that was already fulfilled with Israel, but back in the days. That applies to nobody today. It's not applicable.
Oh, yeah. So because God's people currently are not under the curse, Galatians 3:13. And that's the other bizarre thing about this is working so hard to be cursed. When if you're God's people in 2020, regardless of
free you from the curse of the law.
Yeah, Galatians 3:13. And there's other passages like that. We're not Ephesians 1:3 says we've been predestined. It talks about to receive these blessings in the Son. And all of them are ours now. Now, they're not all 100% worked out if you read the whole thing of Ephesians 1. But these blessings have been given to God's people. So this idea of like we're walking out of curse, and even that's where I got at Dante. Did you pray to God before 2019? Because he was saying the prayer lines will be open in 2019 and we can cry out to God again. Is the indication that before that it wouldn't happen? That is wild. This dude is saying for 400 years, everyone's prayers were going unanswered because God wouldn't hear them as part of a curse. That's what I mean by this is a very real thing. And for people to take that as minor or just somebody hates somebody, this is a big deal. Somebody's saying like, yo, if you pray to God during this whole time, he's not going to hear you. He can't hear you. Now God can finally hear you again after 400 years to listen to us. What? That's not biblical. That's what I'm saying, man. These issues are very serious and very important. I wish people could put down their feelings about somebody and just look and say, okay, is there something here? Because there is definitely something there. That's all I'm trying to get people to see is we shouldn't be playing around with stuff like this.
Revelation 2 and was that 2 and 9, 3 and 9. Who are the synagogue of Satan, Vocab?
Those are the Jews who was persecuting those local Christians.
That has nothing to do with skin color whatsoever. The two passages.
No, it doesn't say anything about skin color. Let me bring something else out that.
Please do.
John's writing to those 7 churches, right? Around 90 AD. Some people want to put it earlier. Very rarely we see somebody put it much later, like 90, whatever. Check this out. John is writing to people in that day saying you're getting persecuted by these people.
In that day.
Okay. So are we to be understanding that by 90 AD, all the white Jews had replaced the black Jews, or at least the white Jews in those locales?
And just a few years later.
Is that what we're to understand? Or are we to understand Revelation 2:9 and 3:9 are literally irrelevant to the very churches Jesus is speaking this to? Because that's what's going to be. Because a lot of these same guys who hold that everyone who doesn't look like them who claims to be a Jew is a fraud or a convert. Big example is the Khazar hypothesis.
Have you read the 13th tribe? What do you think about that?
I had the 13th tribe. I read some of the 13th tribe. So it was written before they could do genetic studies.
Yes, it was.
And before a lot of history was known. I would say it's thoroughly been debunked by 2 main groups of people, historians and geneticists. Now, that's not to say that no Khazars converted. Now, there's an interesting thing is there's different numbers, and because it depends how you do this, but there's different numbers to say what percentage of modern day Jews would have
DNA.
Yeah, which the problem is we don't have it. We don't know exactly what it entails. So what they usually do is, this is my understanding, because I try to look into stuff, is they use a rough analogous population of the Georgians. They usually use a rough analogous population and try to see, okay, so a lot of this is like there's a lot of subtleties here. And so when you look at that, it could be as low, I've seen as low as 7%. I've seen as high as 20, but usually that's only when they're talking about Ashkenazis. But that's not talking about all modern day Jewry, because there's several streams that what they call tributaries. There's several genetic tributaries or community tributaries that flow into the river of modern day Jewry. So the Sephardic tradition in those communities, the Ashkenazi and those communities, I always mispronounce it, but I'm going to say Mizrahi, and I always look back and say, why did I mispronounce that word again? But that's Iran, Iraq, and those places. And then the folks on the continent of Africa. And so I think that includes the Ethiopians and Limba. Okay, and you asked me if there's any black Jews, the Ethiopian Limba, depending on how a person defines Jew. So that gets tricky too, right? Because the Limba, ironically, primarily are Christians. But it's obvious that there's a Semitic component to their gene pool, especially within the male side, especially within the priestly side. And so these are facts on the ground that are real. So there's a lot of subtleties here, but I think a lot of these conversations miss. You know what I mean? But I think they're important to understand. So that's what I would say to that. Was there another question?
Stuff like this would come up all the time. What's on the screen right now? Read that.
Why is my government? What does that mean? The United States, what does it mean in the United States? The United States government is not friendly to me. The United States government tells churches they can't meet and sing together. They're not allowed to sing. The United States government says that, and this is something that's going to happen regardless of your politics. If Biden's elected, he's going to lift the rule called the Hyde Amendment that says your tax dollars cannot fund abortion. Biden used to stand by the Hyde Amendment. He has since rejected it. What Biden is saying is that if I get elected, the Hyde Amendment's going. That means our tax dollars are going to fund abortions. Our money is going to go to kill babies. The government is not on my side. The government is not on our side. The government is out of control with its power. The government's tendency of any place in the world is to always take more power. And that's why people that are conservative that always cape for the police, I never understood that. Isn't part of being a conservative, you have a small vision of government because you recognize the problem of corruption when it's centralized. The police are part of the government. They're an extension of that force. Why would we always give the government the benefit of the doubt? Because the cops are an arm of the government. So he's saying that. I don't agree that this is my government for me doing what I want or something. And here's the thing. In reality, Christians all over the world are who getting slaughtered. China, they still put out people in South Korea, it's crazy what they do. They put people out in stadiums and they'll just machine gun them to death. In China, they're destroying churches and they're putting listening devices in the churches. The pastor says no listening device, they destroy their church. In the Assyrian Triangle, which is not a country but a region that used to be Assyria, almost all the Assyrians have been chased out of it by governments and by rogue forces, sometimes armed by governments, such as when the Turkish government armed Kurdish armed Kurdish people who supported the government. And what they did is they ended up turning those weapons against the Christians of their community and killed some of the oldest community members who had survived from all the way back the Assyrian or Armenian genocide. These are people thinking real persecution. Egypt's percent of the population that was Christian is radically diminished since the so-called Arab Spring. We're talking about a country that was once essentially part of Christendom that now is shrinking from 10%. And the cops are getting pushed, COPTS, the cops are getting pushed down further and further. Even in Ethiopia, groups that are affiliated with Al-Qaeda in those areas are creating some serious problems for Ethiopian Christians on a regular basis in certain regions where they have more power. Same thing with Nigeria. Everywhere you look, even in the Sudan, they'll make it a tribal thing or a color thing, Arab versus black. It's also a Christian oppression thing. The South are black Christians. The North are Arabicized Sudanese. And now, it's been split. We understand that. But this is Christians being persecuted. Everywhere you look in Iraq, I know a ton of Iraqi Christians in Phoenix, Arizona. They all liked it better when Saddam was in control because he was an equal opportunity offender, but he also wanted them protected because he wasn't really a radical. He kind of gave nominal Islam a nod, but he protected the Christians because he wanted peace in his community. He even allowed some Christians in higher positions. Now, you can't go against him. He ain't playing around. I'm not saying Saddam was a good guy. What I'm saying is the Christian situation in Iraq was better under Saddam than it is now since the U.S. went in there. So I'm not for the actions of the U.S. government. I'm not for the government for what, by and large, they're always against us. And that's why the Babylonian system is a worldwide government, whether unified in name or not. That's Babylon, not America. I'm not into this America-centric prophetic stuff that we saw how Lindsay fail in, Jack Van Impe get wrong, and all these other guys. It's Babylon is the world system that the devil is ultimately with, that has always been against us. And Jesus prophesied that in John 15. They're going to kick you out of synagogues, think they're going to do it in the name of God, you know? So I understand people are saying that. I don't feel that way. I don't think that at all. It's not my government. And right? But what do? Where else do you go? My friend who went to Egypt because he used to be part of GOCC, he realized how much worse Egypt was in the United States, and now he's back. He spent 4.5 years there. So, like, what do? You know, we occupy till he comes.
Read the screen, Vocab, and help us out right here.
So we scattered four corners. Explain what would that happen to. Notice we're not really talking about the debate anymore, and that's fine. I'm not blaming you. I'm just saying.
No, because some other Christian questions are coming up. Yeah, because
I get it. I'm just saying to the audience, these are just standard Hebrew Israelite Christian questions, right?
That's right. And
he will gather from the four corners at end times. Two things about that. Basically, that the scattering of Israel has happened numerous times, of course. And different versions of gathering have happened again. Now, I'm not a 1948er, meaning I don't view it as really relevant to biblical prophecy. And that gets me in trouble with my dispensationalist friends, right? Because I'm not on a dispy. I'm not with that. I'm not anti that. I'm just saying I don't agree that that's the case. So the regathering, that when you see about end times regathering, there's two things to consider. Sometimes these texts either do this. Right. It's funny. Sister E, answer. Did Dante Fortune answer my direct questions about 4 years prophecy? You know, but there's a lot of questions on the screen. I'll answer them, but you're just going so fast, brother. Like that one just now, Maya Jew. I'll answer all these, but you're just going too fast. So there's two things about this. I hold that Romans 11 teaches there will be a final mass conversion of ethnic Israelites. So if you read Romans 9 through 11, Paul uses the word Jew or Israel in two different senses. And what you have to do is you have to find out which sense does he mean it here. And what I'm saying is because he says there, not all who are of Israel are of Israel. So clearly when he's talking about Israel, according to the flesh, my kinsmen according to the flesh, he's talking about a different sense than when he says not all who are descended of Israel are Israel, right? So you have to find out which sense is it. Because I think Romans 9 through 11 is clearly a midsection of the book that hangs together, he opens it up talking about his kinsmen according to the flesh, right? So at the end of Romans, when he says that all Israel be saved, it makes sense to connect that to kinsmen according to the flesh, actual ethnic Israelites, right? So I do believe that's the case. Now, not all Christians hold that there will be a mass conversion of actual ethnic Israelites in the end times. I do hold to that, and I'm still a historic premillennial. So just because you're historic premillennial doesn't necessarily determine what you view, how you view that passage. So I do hold that. My point by saying that is that's an end times gathering to me. It's not anymore about gathering in a place. It's about gathering around a person, because this end times mass conversion is about being in the one olive tree. It's about being a vine or a branch rather connected to the vine. So that's one thing to say as far as end times gathering. The other is sometimes you see those, and remember, you know, Dante will call it replacement theology. That's a new term. We've never called ourselves that, but whatever they want to say, because that's a dispensationalist reaction against us. Covenant theology or fulfillment theology. And a lot of times I'll just say covenant fulfillment theology. Covenant fulfillment theology says that a lot of those passages are saying basically that this is the worldwide church being gathered. So in essence, Matthew 28 is the beginning of Matthew 28 is fulfilling these prophecies about that. So he can't see the ethnic Israelites rising now. Well, it doesn't say, see, that's Kwam Yasharallah talk. Israel rising is different than ethnic Israelites being under the lordship of Jesus Christ. See, this is what I'm saying. We can't confuse I woke up to my identity with now I am a servant of the Most High. Those are not always the same thing. And so we need to really recognize that. So that's really the issue here. So I also hold that like this idea of like, you know, they're associating themselves, people asking these kind of questions, as everything happening with us is a fulfillment of this prophecy. That's a very contentious point, to say the least, about who the us is that's getting this. And who is the us? Whenever people say us, I say define that, and can you demonstrate that you are decidedly part of this us? We got some other questions. I saw someone ask if I was a Jew. They wanted to ask that.
Yes. Did you answer that?
No, I didn't. No, I'm not. I had some family members who saw our last name and said, you know, there's some Jews who have the same last name, right? And so they tracked it down, hoping that it was the case, right? It was not the case. You can have the same last name and not be not be of that, right? And so that's what happened. And so that was a disappointment to some people. Usually when someone asks what I am, I just say Italian or Sicilian. And that's kind of a common thing. I'm not full-blooded, but a lot of people who are part Italian, part Sicilian will say, if you ask them, they're going to say it's Sicilian. That's the thing they're going to say. And so that's what I say. But people are interested in, I don't think it's very relevant. And notice this, I'm a covenant fulfillment guy. I don't hold that the ethnicity of any modern day given ethnic Jew is relevant to their standing before God. Not that they're not a Jew anymore in whatever. Not that there shouldn't be evangelism, none of that, but just that it's not relevant to their standing before God. Same thing about, national Israel. That nation is not under covenant with God. Call that nation God's people, to me, is a travesty. God's people is doing that. Well, I'm not saying their neighbors are perfect. I'm not banging on the nation of Israel in the way sometimes people do. What I'm saying is, this is a group of people that the right of return doesn't apply to you if you're a Messianic Jew. You can be, apparently full-blooded Jewish, but if you call yourself Messianic, they won't let you in there under the right of return. They stop proselytizing activities. Now they don't cut off people's hands like in Saudi, but they still have an aggressive program against proselytizing. It's more free than the rest of the Middle East, but still, I'm saying God's people aren't going to stop the gospel from going forward. What does Semitic mean? Well, basically it means of Shem, ultimately. It just means of Shem. So this includes
Ron would like to talk.
This includes Arab peoples. Well, I've got about 15 minutes. You remember like last Wednesday, you wanted to do some stuff, and I said I got to get up by this time because I go to service on Wednesday night. So I gotta get some food for some people, and then I gotta go to service. So I feel like if we go there, it's going to take another different direction. I'm not against talking to him, but I'd rather you, especially about this debate, because I want everything to be cleared up.
And I want you to take your last couple of minutes. What if y'all have any questions on the debate and any other thoughts that you wanted to bring out, any things that troubled you, any things that you noticed that you wanted to kind of bring out, and would you like to do it again? Maybe to stick, because I've seen a lot of people even earlier. Let's get to the 400 years. Stick to the 400 years. We saw that from the introduction, from the beginning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would debate. For example, now I saw that you said Teo was on your show, and I heard him say we used to debate people, but then we stopped.
And he said, last month. Yes,
would you come out of it? Now I never knew Teo was even debating people, so I don't know.
Would you like to have a discussion with that? Oh, I don't like even calling it a debate over here, but good bills discussion.
I would 100% be down. My guess is Teo is not. They're not gonna have any interest in that, and that's fine. But I'm 100% down with them or Dante or anyone else that holds to the.
Who you like in the Messianic or what some apologists would call moderate community to have a discussion with?
Or
that you think you got some interesting material.
Well, a lot of these guys have interesting material. I mean, I think it's interesting that Teo teaches that Jerusalem's not in Israel and that it's somewhere in Africa. He doesn't know where, or they don't know where. I think that's interesting. So
he even agreed that a lot of people don't even. He agreed, like a lot of people wouldn't agree with me on this. So he even knows that they understand that.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. I mean,
you ever had a conversation with Ron Dalton?
I talked to Ron Dalton. Last time we talked about it, he didn't want to do it unless it could be in person, and I wasn't trying to do that. I wasn't trying to do an in-person thing.
You mean not like on here, like how we did with?
Yeah, he's like, well, I'll fly you here and do this, and I'm like, no, I'm not trying to. No. Well, why can't we do a sit down? I see you had the same problem with Sakari. They didn't want to do the flying thing. They wanted to do something virtual. So I would do something with Ron Dalton, but I'd like to be virtual. So I thought with him, it'd be interesting to see, does he get into Bible much? Because I know people talk about Ron Dalton and DNA. I'd like to see
that. Yes.
Because ultimately the DNA is irrelevant if the theological claims aren't important. So the essence of why you would want to prove the DNA has to do with the theology behind it. So I think I'm always more focused on that. To me, I'm okay to have some discussion about DNA, but I notice it can get kind of bogged down really fast, where someone says, well, here's my DNA chart, and then they start mentioning, L2s. And it takes a while to find out what they're saying. and I'm not trying to be rude, almost every time I've heard these folks talk about this and that, every time I look at what they refer me to, they almost always have it wrong. I had the guy the other day talking about a paper by Michael Hammer. And, I couldn't look at it during the discussion, but I was like, there's no way Michael Hammer agrees with the guy. So I went to go look at what Michael Hammer said. He's a top geneticist. It was way out of what this person was saying. Michael Hammer was saying. Michael Hammer is a Jewish geneticist, one of the top in his field. And I run into that problem a lot. They'll be like,
misquoting a source.
Yeah, or misunderstanding it or being dishonest. I don't know, like I remember the other day, a guy named Asa K. Fingers. He's with Israel of God, who I respect them. They're very nice, cordial, manly, entrepreneurial folks.
Yes, good people.
But he brought this out of a professor at Duke, and he said, apologists want DNA. Watch this. I watched it because I knew the author, because I was like, I think I've got this author's book. I did have that author's book, and I looked at it. I was like, yo, this dude he was saying the opposite of what the person who shared the link was saying. He was literally saying and I'm like, how can you watch this, tell people this is evidence for position when it's the opposite? So I've noticed that a lot of times. So the DNA things we could do, but it's even more kind of bogged down than the biblical stuff. My favorite thing to do would be Ron is I've never really seen him do much in the scripture. I'd love to see a discussion where he's more scriptural based as an approach, but I would talk to him. He's pretty polemical, I find, but I'll still talk to anybody. There's nobody.
Okay, let me thank you. We appreciate you, A-Unit. Let me say one thing. I think I missed one. I'm trying to go back to it. Ask Vocab, is it biblical to speak reparations for the victims of the transatlantic slave trade?
Well, it depends how you find reparations. The concept in itself, like in a raw, kind of naked sense, is obviously a biblical idea. You pay back the victim. But the question is, in what way would this apply to the TAST? I think those are the big questions. And so saying you agree to it's one thing, and then saying how to work it out is another. And I think there's some timing issues. I think there's a lot of challenge there that I don't know if we've considered. And I don't like the idea of signing off on policy or idea before we actually say what it is. So I think there's some problems when we talk about the categories of biblical reparations, and then what we're talking about here when we talk about reparations in relationship to this, primarily because the same conditions don't hold. And then I think there's some issues of like, what do we pay for or not pay for? I don't know. There's a lot of problems to me. So what should have happened is there should have been a lot more done immediately after so-called emancipation. A lot of unfulfilled promises, a lot of lies, a lot of things. And it's tough because these things that should have happened right then that didn't happen, they're still with us, but it's very difficult to say now we're going to make up for this. There's some challenging problems, I think, that I don't think sometimes people will just want you to sign on without looking at the problem. So I don't know. I'm still listening to all the arguments for these discussions in regards to that.
Okay. What else in closing?
Well, bring it back to the
Ron
discussion.
asked if we could do another thing. Go ahead.
Yeah. And if you're down, I'm down.
I'll set something up, Ron. I'll let you get on top of that now, and I'll look at Vocab, check out his schedule.
So
make it up for it. Go ahead.
In the 400 years, I wish people could see the 400 years prophecy and related conversations do not necessarily determine any given person's ethnic lineage. I understand they're related, but these are technically separate issues about a 400-year prophecy. So when we look and we say, okay, we got this 400-year prophecy. What is the content of it? Has it been fulfilled? That's an important thing to say, because we're asking, have they led us astray in what they've said? And all these little caveats don't discount what you've actually said or actually taught. And you can't have it both ways. You can't have fulfilled predictions and fulfilled prophecies without making predictions and prophecies. You don't get the reward without taking the risk. That's the problem I see kind of going on here. So that's why I keep on saying, stand by yours. I don't feel that there's really a willingness to stand by yours. So if you look at my opening statement again, everything tied in. The essence was, Dante says he doesn't promote modern day prophets. He does promote these guys. They make a false prophecy, but not only do they make it, and not only does he say, yes, he also has his own version or his own contribution to the 400-year prophecy, and where he says yes to that, but he's wrong on that. And that's why he's going to have to show how it was either fulfilled or that he didn't promote it. His position is that it was fulfilled, and we're just too dumb to see it. The people who don't believe it. That's basically his position. He failed utterly to show that, because more interesting to him is vocab a racist, and are we the people of the book, according to this article that was printed in the 1880s by a Frenchman or something like that. So like we have to really ask ourselves what we were supposed to be discussing. The second round, all I did was read his article, the final Juneteenth. I never referred to Teo once, except I said I knew they weren't going to defend Teo stuff, so here's this article. So when Dante says Vocab's second entire thing was all about Teo, actually listen to it yourself. It was all about his article. I don't know why he said that. The recording is there. My opening statement is right. It's sitting in front of me. I know exactly what I said. My second statement was all about his article, the final Juneteenth. That's what it was on. And I think this whole discussion was wrapped up with one thing I'm going to bring out right now that to me is kind of the end. What's 2019 minus 1619? It depends. What's 2020 minus 1619? It depends. What's 2021 minus 1619? 402. How is it that Dante Fortson knows what 2021 minus 1619? How is it that he can do the math on that? But for the other 2 years, he has to give a qualification of it depends. Those three questions in a row show the hypocrisy and silliness ultimately of this position. Why did he answer that way? People need to really ask themselves, why did he answer that way? It's just simple numbers. The other thing that was damning was, who are the Amorites? I don't know. The Amorites are key to that. If it's already been filled, it's already been filled. We brought out from Joshua and from Acts that it was fulfilled. So we can't look to another place to fulfill it. If you want to teach there needs to be a double fulfillment, then you got to do that work as well. None of that was done. Of greater interest was this vocab racist and who's the people, which is not the topic of the debate. So people say it brought receipts. I put under your video of this discussion, I put all the sources I cited. It's under there, unless it gets deleted or it doesn't. The last time I looked, it was there. So if you look, there's a little comment that I have. It's not pinned or anything, but it gives all the titles and in some cases even the hyperlinks. I don't want to put too many hyperlinks. I was worried YouTube would like take it off and not let it be on there because they'll do that. They'll be like, oh, you're spamming because all these links are in there. So you look at that. It is what it is. CIA, I said I couldn't resist. Oh, see, man. When
Thank you, Melinda, for super chat.
Yeah, well, CIA is international stuff, right? FBI is supposed to be domestic, right? So wouldn't I need to be FBI unless I'm monkeying around in international affairs? You know, here, let me say this. I'm going to show you some more hypocrisy.
Tell us.
If you thought I was an FBI agent or a CIA agent, I don't mean you, I mean to people like Dante and Pastor Kelly Richardson. Would you
Pastor
also
Kelly
say
Richardson think you're a CIA agent?
He's my understanding. I don't remember him saying as explicit as others, but I think he thinks that. But here's the reason why I said his name on this. Would you then threaten to sue me? Dante Fortson has a video called "How to Sue Vocab Malone." He talks about, let's have a civil discourse. Let's do that. We're so nice. He have a video called "How to Sue Vocab Malone." He encouraged everyone who follows him to sue me. Like, what? How is this like okay or cool? And this also shows cowardice, in my opinion. So here's my point. If you thought I worked for the FBI, would you try to sue me? Him saying I'm going to sue you shows they don't really think I work for the government. And if I work for the government, tell me, Lord, why do I wake up at 4:30, 4:45 every day, take my kids where they need to go before school, do my job, come back, finish their school, then turn around, make dinner, and then do what we have to do that? Why do I do that every day of my life? If you don't understand this stuff, there's not a lot of love in urban apologetics. You can call us what you want, whatever. And even, you kind of say, well, vocab, people know it. There's not a lot of love in this. The church a lot of times doesn't care. They're into other things. The people you go after do things that are, some of them will do things that are abnormal. It's abnormal to start talking about, let's sue this guy. Mormons don't do that when you go after their doctrine. Historically, now back in the day, the church was a little more wild, the LDS church. They don't talk about suing you, or they don't talk about, like Sakari with Sam the other day. We know that your ex-wife was a whore, or your little daughter's whores too. This is what they said to him. Now, I'm not associating that with Dante, okay? What I'm saying is very few apologists want to deal with that kind of stuff, plus a church who really doesn't care. The church is kind of like asleep at the wheel. I'm not saying the church doesn't care. I'm just saying a lot of them are like, I don't really, what's the big deal? We don't take this serious. We'll just do our own thing, whatever. So like, we're kind of in no man's land where like the world thinks it's weird to interact with this stuff. The church just kind of doesn't think it's important. The academic community, I'm talking about real. I don't mean conspiracy theory. The academic community doesn't take it serious. So by and large, they're like, this is not something that you can really do academic work. Like it's this kind of void where there's a lot of apathy. The people who care are the people who believe they're part of these fulfilled prophecies or fulfilled things. So the most active kind of zeal and energy comes from them. So the second you get into this, you're automatically an underdog. I don't mean in larger society. I'm just saying online, you're automatically an underdog because of the way things are. And so this is not like some, we try to have fun so we don't cry, but man, like this is, you did urban apologetics. I know you've kind of removed yourself in a certain, but you know what I'm talking about. This is not like this is not some glamorous thing to be involved with. It never was, man. So I know people say that, but nah. So no, not an agent. I wouldn't work for the government in that capacity anyway, to be frank with you.
They said a lot of people said, well, when we asked last time about the FBI or something to that effect, that you didn't really answer. So that proves right there, because you can't lie if you're really a cop or you're really undercover. So you just kind of danced around. And what other lady said? Filibustering. Yeah.
Well, I thought I was a liar. Dante always says I'm a liar, so why would I care about I can't lie? It's just silly. No, I'm not, but check it out. The reason why is sometimes it's like, are we serious with this question right now? No, I do not work for the government in any capacity. I do not work for the government in any capacity. And my point is, by saying that, if I did, why do I have to do what I've been doing in my job and in my life and all that? Never have. And that's what I'm saying. Is anyone who comes against the doctrine, is that what we're going to do? They're racist. They work for the government, or they're a sellout. Dante, you got his post. He calls people COON. He calls them this. So he is literally the embodiment of what I was satirizing in the Private Eye for Yahushai skit, where I said that to no one who was on the phone. He is literally doing that, where that's all you do is slur your opponents. So, we got closet LBGQ, we got Coon, we got this, we got that. Just so conspiracy theory is racist. Does he work for the Ashkenazis? Ashkenazis don't support what I do because I stand against them. I do not hold that they are the modern day people of God, purely based upon whatever their lineage is. I do not hold that Israel is God's people. I do not hold to that. They are not with me. I try to convert them to the gospel. I promote ministries and things the opposite. I don't. This is what I'm saying. It's crazy. It's crazy. As if Ashkenazis even discussion between him and Ron Dalton Jr. Ron Shields. Well, like I said, I'm down. Ron Shields is, generally speaking, more amicable than Ron Dalton. And I know this because of our DM messages to each other, in which if a person acts some way with the camera on, I give them a little bit of leeway because I get it. But if you act in just wild in the DMs when it's just you and the other person and you still can't and that, to me, that was Ron Dalton. Like, bro, it's just you and me here. Like, what is this? He was kind of like that. But at the same time, I'd be down to talk to him. But I would really like to see Ron get more into scripture and Bible than anything. But I appreciate the questions, Brian. And I know you'll get some flack for this. Anytime you don't call me or to respond, I would never take it personal, because I would understand basically, hey, it ain't worth it, right? And there's always someone else to talk to. So I get that. So no one has to know what, you know what I mean? But at the same time, it's not going to make me disappear. The Lord's sovereign. I get that tomorrow. But at the same time, I'm not going to disappear because my heart is in this. And that's why when I first met you, we had a build. My heart was in it then, and my heart is still in it. And between that time I met you and now, a lot of people, and some may even say yourself, have left the community. So it's a long-term thing. It's a long-term battle. You know what I'm saying? And so here I am.
All right, man. We appreciate having you on. Would you like to say any special words to the individuals, to the group or the people on your way out the door? You're definitely invited back anytime. You're the guy that the Israelites love to hate. So of course we love to have you on.
Yeah, I mean, I wish it wasn't that way, but at the same time, I can't switch up the whole thing just because of that. I'd rather it not be that way. And at the same time, that's kind of to be expected a little bit. It'd be weird if you're coming against doctrine and everyone in that faction liked you. That'd be kind of strange. You'd be like, that would show maybe you're not really doing nothing. They might view you as what's called a useful idiot. if they're not, useful idiots where, that kind of thing. So, but it doesn't have to be so much hostility. And here, check this out. Before I did this hardcore, stuff relating to this, my apologetic endeavors, a lot of it was with atheists, Muslims. You've heard this before, Mormons, Jehovah's, but especially if you look at atheists, I'm not asking everyone to check a whole track record. Let me just say this real quick, though. I started out on the street with atheists, and this was when the neo-atheists were coming about. They had read Richard Dawkins' book, and they were pissed. They felt like they'd been lied to, so they were coming hard at Christians. And I'm talking about on the street. So I was in kind of these areas that would be called like the Strip. It's called Mill Avenue, but areas where college campus kids would go out, and it was like these areas where they were there to party, but also to argue and fight and whatever else. And there would always be these atheists, and so we had these discussions. And it started out pretty hostile with a lot of these atheists on the street, right? So street debates with atheists, right? Jesus never existed, and you're pedophiles touching everybody, associating you with, Catholic Church, all this kind of stuff. With a lot of these guys, over the course of the years, 2-3 years of going out there every single Friday and sometimes Saturday, I became friends with a lot of these atheists. Now, we still had our problems. Some of them actually even close friends where they helped me and I helped them in certain life situations. Now, we still had serious issues, and they always would have other atheist friends who were like, how could you hang out with this dude? This dude's an idiot. Anyone that believes what he believes, this dude's part of a system that's wicked. Some atheists are just hardcore. They can't see anyone who holds to the Bible as being but my friends, Omar, for example, I'll mention some names. They were like, no, man, he's cool. We disagree, but I like talking to him, and we're friends, and I'm going to help him, and he helps me. And so I had that mentality that could be the same way with Hebrew Israelites when I first got in this. And what happens is you see that you kind of quickly learn different, because there's people like Tazariak out there in the world and Hakah, and they take any act of genuine authenticity, kindness as a way to get in and slam. I remember Tazariak told my friend of mine when he talked to me on the phone, when I complimented him, because I said, you have a good reputation with other Israelites and you have a strong skill set. You got respect. I said something like that, which is true. He told my friend that's when he got pissed off in the conversation. This was in the very beginning. I paid him a compliment, which was a legitimate compliment. He said, and he was going to let me have it. Now, he was going to try to pull his hijinks the whole time. I already knew that. In hindsight is what I mean. But what I'm saying is you're dealing with guys who take a legitimate compliment as something that makes them upset because, that's a sign of manipulation, so I'm about to get you. So like having some of these discussions taught me real quick, you got to be defensive first or they're going to use you. And that's why you see these video titles, destroyed, cut, murder. Like that. You don't ever see me put stuff like, I'll have fun and play around, but there's always a line. It's like with Batman. He never kills the person. You know what I'm saying? He does some wild stuff, but there's always a line. With some of these other dudes, there's no line. So all I'm saying is it could be that way, but I've noticed it's not easy because a lot of folks view it as you're attacking their identity. So you must hate me. Right. And so it's difficult to be a friend with that person if you think that. But I got a jam.
All right, brother. All right, man. We appreciate having y'all on. We appreciate everybody for the support. Thank you. If y'all got any other questions, any other suggestions, I see Ron hit me. No, we're going to open up maybe tomorrow night. We'll open up that panel. We'll have some other stuff on there. All right, Vocab, man. We appreciate you. Anybody want to send you some hate mail? You got an email account you want to give out?
Sure. Yeah. The Street Apologist at Gmail. The Street Apologist at gmail.com. And
you do your program every night, 3 nights a week?
I've cut back so I can do stuff on other people's platforms more because I like doing my own live streams, but I also don't want to be insular. So I'm willing to go other places and do whatever. And shout out to G-Con. He's helped open a lot of those doors.
He hit me up. Yeah.
G-Con is a good person. I think you should really get G-Con on if you can. He always brings something
he hit me today.
He's a perfect example of what I'm talking about. G-Con has publicly disagreed with me. I disagree with his positions, and we can talk, sit down, and have disagreements. But at the end of the day, we know it's man to man. I'm not going to take offense. He's not going to take offense. We'll even play around. We'll debate, all that kind of stuff in regards to our positions. But at the end of the day, there's a friendship. I mean, you got each other's back. And I think he would make a good guest on here because he has somewhat of a different perspective. And he'll tell you, and he'll bring his stuff forward. But at the end of the day, him and I ride and roll, and he's good. And he's got a lot of interesting stuff to say. G-Con always got, I don't know how he keeps all that stuff in his mind. He'll be riding around his truck, quoting all this stuff. I'm like, how are you doing this, bro? I gotta look at a screen. Something most of the like how he would just.
I guess he always got them headphones on. I guess he listening and driving at the same time.
Yeah, he's all So if you look at Genesis 49, hold on, this guy's in my lane. I'm like, bro, how you doing this, man? So he's a good dude. I think he'd make a good guest on here. Shout out to him. Shout out to I saw Andrea Cruz in here and everybody else, but especially GCon. And so yeah, I've been doing more stuff. I still do stuff on my platform. If somebody wants to have a discussion, it can be a chill or not. They can come on and we'll talk. I got several coming up at Debate Talk for You at the end of this month, for example, several debates. Okay, all right. So let us know about that. Keep us informed. We'll definitely have you back on, brother. We appreciate you. Thanks for coming and answering these questions, man. And we'll see you soon. All right, God bless. Appreciate it. Have a good one. Peace. All right.